They say discipline is hard, but living without it, that's where the real suffering begins. You won't always feel like doing the right thing. But if you only act when it's easy, you'll never build a life worth remembering. In a world obsessed with comfort, the disciplined man walks alone, quiet, steady, and unbreakable. So, what wakes you up in the morning? Is it habit or purpose? Marcus Aurelius believed that purpose wasn't just a noble idea, it was the very reason we exist. He didn't ask the world for comfort. He asked himself, what was I made to do? And then he did it, without complaint, without delay. He wrote, what do I have to complain of if I'm going to do what I was born for? That question, quiet yet piercing, reminds us that discipline begins with a clear reason why. You see, when your reason is strong, you don't wait for motivation. You don't ask, do I feel like it? You simply begin. Because purpose doesn't negotiate with emotion. It commands action. Imagine this. Your car breaks down in the middle of nowhere. You're tired, cold, maybe even frustrated. But you don't sit there feeling sorry for yourself. You change the tire. Why? Because the purpose is clear, get back on the road. Now ask yourself, what if you treated every goal in your life with that same clarity? Whether you want to write a book, lose weight, learn a language, or heal from the past, the first step is not waiting. It's starting. You start messy, confused, uncomfortable. But the act of starting, that's discipline. That's power. And it's not about perfection. It's about becoming the kind of person who does what needs to be done, not just when it's easy, but especially when it's hard. So when life turns cold, when support disappears, when the world forgets your name, what then? That's when Stoicism whispers, count on yourself. You see, a Stoic doesn't build strength on applause, comfort, or validation. Number A, Stoic builds strength on character. Because there will be days when no one checks on you, when the motivation runs dry, when the weight feels heavier than usual. And on those days, you have to be the one who keeps showing up. Not because it's easy, but because it's necessary. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. That's not just philosophy. That's armor. It means when plans fall apart, you don't. When people disappoint you, you stay grounded. When things don't go your way, you don't complain. You don't beg, you adapt. You move. Quietly, steadily, like a mountain that remains unmoved by the storm. And when you fail, because yes, you will, you don't collapse in shame. You reflect. You learn. Then you get back up with more clarity than before. That's what it means to count on yourself. It's not arrogance, it's inner responsibility. And once you truly embrace that, life can still be hard, yes, but you become unshakable. It's not always dramatic. Sometimes it's just you standing in the quiet, making a simple but powerful decision. Do I scroll or do I sleep early? Do I react or do I stay calm? Do I chase comfort or build character? You know, the Stoic path isn't filled with applause or recognition. It's filled with small, invisible victories, saying no to what weakens you, saying yes to what strengthens you. Discipline doesn't arrive with fireworks. It shows up quietly when no one's watching. When your body wants to stay in bed but your mind says, get up. When temptation knocks and you answer with stillness. When you're surrounded by noise but choose silence. These aren't grand gestures, they're choices. Repeated. Daily. Without an audience. Without reward. That's what builds a Stoic, not the moments when it's easy, but the ones when it isn't. And you still do the hard thing. Again, and again, and again. That's how strength is earned, not given. So, don't wait for motivation. Don't wait for perfect timing. Just begin. Begin where you are, with what you have, and keep going even if no one claps. Because your life is not a performance. It's a practice. Real discipline is invisible. It's not what you post online. It's not in your highlight reel. It's in the unseen moments when you clean the kitchen instead of leaving it for later. When you return the shopping cart, not because someone's watching, but because it's right. It's when you resist the urge to argue and choose to walk away. When you keep your promise to yourself, even if no one would know you broke it. That's real discipline, not loud, but powerful. Not for attention, but for alignment. And that's what Stoicism teaches. That strength isn't for show. It's for service to your values, to your principles, to the future version of you. So the next time you wonder if your effort matters, if your small habits are worth it, remember this. The world may never see your quiet victories, but they shape everything you become. They are the silent bricks of an unshakable life. And in the end, that's the only applause you'll ever need. It's not about punishment. Discipline isn't about making yourself suffer. It's about choosing a better kind of struggle, the kind that builds you. You don't say no to comfort because you hate yourself. You say no because you love what you're becoming. When you wake up early, it's not because sleep is bad, it's because clarity at dawn serves your purpose. When you skip the impulse buy, it's not because you're stingy, it's because you're building the muscle of restraint. That's what Stoics knew, that every sacrifice is really a trade, not pain for pain, but discomfort for meaning. So don't think of discipline as a prison, think of it as a path. 1. You walk by choice with quiet steps, steady breath, and a promise to your future self. I won't betray you today. Discipline is remembering what you want most, not just what you want right now. In the quiet moments when no one is watching, temptation will whisper just this once. No one will know. But your deeper self, it always knows. The Stoics believed in aligning desire with reason, not suppressing every want, but training the mind to crave what truly matters. So when you're torn between momentary ease and long-term peace, ask yourself which desire leads to strength and which one steals it. It's not about force, it's about clarity. When the why is strong, the no becomes peaceful. You don't fight cravings, you outgrow them. Because the man who lives by purpose doesn't need to resist every urge, he simply walks past them towards something greater. You see, every choice is a crossroads. One path pulls you toward what's easy comfort, distraction, immediate relief. The other points toward what's meaningful growth, peace, self-respect. One fades the moment you reach for it. The other shapes who you become. Discipline isn't about rejecting joy. It's about refusing the cheap version of it. It's about looking at a temptation and saying, "You're not worth the cost of who I want to be." The Stoics knew this deeply. Epictetus said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." So, what if freedom isn't doing what you want, but doing what's right, even when it's hard? Can you feel that shift? That moment where discipline becomes liberation, not restriction? Just pause and think, what do you truly want most? Too often, we treat discipline like a prison, a list of rules that strip joy from life. But the Stoics saw it differently. Discipline was alignment not with trends, not with comfort, but with your highest self. You don't wake up to suffer. You wake up to stay steady. You don't avoid pleasures out of fear. You choose which ones honor your principles. You don't say no because you hate yourself. You say no because you respect your future. And that's the difference. Punishment is forced. Alignment is chosen. You're not dragging yourself toward discipline. You're returning to it. You're coming back to what matters. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." That's not rigidity. That's clarity. So next time it feels hard to stay consistent, ask yourself, am I punishing myself or simply walking in line with who I said I'd be? Discipline doesn't start with waking up at 5 a.m. or hitting the gym when you're exhausted. It starts long before that in your thoughts, in the quiet conversations you have with yourself when no one is watching. If your mind is chaotic, your actions will follow. But if your inner world is steady, if you've trained your thoughts to obey reason over impulse, then everything outside begins to shift. You start saying no to what drains you, yes to what builds you. Not because it's easy, but because you've already made peace with the difficulty. Epictetus said, "First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do." That's the process. You decide who you are not by chance, but by choice, and then you let your actions reflect that decision. Your habits are the echo of your thoughts. So if you want to change what you do, change how you think. Begin there in the silence where the real war is won. There will be mornings when your body aches, when your thoughts feel heavy, and quitting whispers like a friend. That's when it matters most. Not when things are smooth, but when everything in you wants to stop. Discipline isn't built in comfort, it's forged in resistance. In the moment you rise anyway, in the breath you take before facing what you'd rather avoid. That's the fire. And you don't need to be perfect, you just need to be present. You show up again and again and again. That's what makes you unbreakable. Not loud declarations, not fleeting motivation, but quiet consistency. The Stoics didn't ask whether it felt good, they asked, is this the right thing? When your emotions scream, give up, your values whisper, stay the course. And if you listen, truly listen, you'll find a strength that isn't dramatic, but deeply steady. You'll stop seeking the easy road and start respecting the difficult one. The Stoics didn't avoid discomfort, they walked into it. Eyes open, breath steady. They believed that pain wasn't the enemy, illusion was. So they trained their minds to endure what others escaped. Cold mornings, harsh words, sudden losses. They practiced poverty in times of wealth, silence in moments of chaos, restraint when anger came knocking. Why? Because when life finally tested them, they didn't flinch, they had already rehearsed the storm. You see, when you choose voluntary hardship, you rob adversity of its surprise. And in that preparation, you discover your own power. Not the power to dominate, but to endure without breaking, to feel pressure and remain calm, to feel loss and still choose gratitude. That's real discipline. Not reacting to life, but responding with character. And that kind of strength doesn't come from reading about Stoicism, it comes from living it, one uncomfortable step at a time. The Stoics didn't wait for justice before they acted with virtue. They didn't wait for applause before they chose the right path. They didn't need the world to be fair because they knew it wouldn't be. Instead, they trained for what is, for betrayal, for loss, for failure, for storms that come with no warning. They built a fortress not on sand, but on truth, the unshakable truth that life doesn't owe you anything. So they let go of complaint and chose preparation. When insult came, they were already grounded. When fortune vanished, they still had their principles. You see, the world doesn't break you, your expectations do. But if you train for the chaos, if you sharpen your reason and anchor yourself to virtue, then even when the world spins mad, you remain still. That's Stoicism, not escape, but endurance. Not hoping life will be easy, but becoming the kind of person who stays steady when it isn't. The Stoics didn't wake up hoping to feel inspired. They didn't wait for the right mood to act. They understood that motivation is fleeting, unreliable, like a storm that passes. So instead of chasing a feeling, they built systems, clear routines, fixed duties, small daily disciplines that didn't rely on how they felt. Marcus Aurelius wrote every morning not because he was excited, but because it was necessary. Epictetus taught that you don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your training. You want peace? Train your thoughts. You want strength? Train your actions. The Stoics didn't depend on moods, they depended on structure. They turned values into habits, and habits into character. So the next time you feel low, undisciplined, scattered, don't ask for inspiration. Ask for a system. And remember this, consistency doesn't come from hype. It comes from building a life that doesn't need hype to move. The Stoics didn't spend their lives arguing with their emotions. They didn't indulge every feeling or seek endless explanations for every mood swing. Instead, they practiced observing calmly without judgment. When anger rose, they noticed it. When fear crept in, they acknowledged it, then asked, "Is this useful? Is this aligned with reason?" Seneca once said, "A wise man is never carried away by fear." Why? Because he knows fear doesn't predict the future, it only distorts the present. The Stoics didn't suppress emotions, but they didn't let emotions rule either. They trained themselves to pause, to breathe, to create space between stimulus and response. Think about your own life. How many times have you said something in anger that you later regretted? How often have you acted out of panic only to make things worse? Mastery means not being numb, it means being in control. Like a ship's captain in a storm, you can't stop the waves, but you can steer with wisdom. That's what Stoics did, and that's what you can practice one moment of calm at a time. The Stoics didn't run from discomfort. They didn't seek ease or cling to luxury. Instead, they walked straight into hardship, not out of recklessness, but out of training. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that life was tough by design, and that strength was forged through challenge, not comfort. You see, when we shield ourselves from every cold wind, we grow soft. When we fear every hardship, we lose the edge we need to survive. The Stoics practiced voluntary discomfort, cold baths, simple meals, long walks, so they would be ready when life truly tested them. Epictetus, once a slave, didn't ask for pity. He asked, "How will I respond?" That was the real power, not in controlling what happened, but in choosing how to stand firm regardless. So, next time something feels uncomfortable, a hard conversation, a moment of rejection, a morning when you don't feel like rising, just pause and ask, what would a Stoic do? They wouldn't complain. They wouldn't fold. They would endure and grow stronger with every step. The Stoics understood that between stimulus and response, there is a space, and in that space lies our power to choose. They didn't react on impulse. They didn't let emotion hijack reason. Instead, they created a pause, a breath, a moment, a sacred silence where they could choose a response guided by principle, not passion. When someone insulted them, they didn't lash out. When plans crumbled, they didn't fall apart. They returned inward, checked their emotions, and asked themselves, what is within my control? That question was their compass. Seneca once said, a wise man is never angry, not because he's numb, but because he's trained his mind not to be ruled by the chaos around him. Imagine the strength it takes to face provocation with stillness, to meet rudeness with calm, to answer ignorance with patience. That's the Stoic way. You don't suppress your emotions, you rise above them. You don't react, you respond with discipline, clarity, and courage. Time. It slips through your fingers faster than you can hold it. The Stoics knew this all too well. They didn't treat time as something they owned, but as something they were borrowing moment by moment, breath by breath. Marcus Aurelius warned, you could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do, say, and think. You see, they weren't obsessed with productivity for the sake of achievement. They valued time because they understood its scarcity. Every distraction, every idle complaint, every grudge was theft. Not theft from others, but from themselves, from their own limited existence. Seneca wrote, people are frugal with their money, but wasteful with their time, the one thing it's right to be stingy with. So ask yourself, what are you spending your time on? What do you postpone, hoping there will be more tomorrows? Because to a Stoic, delaying what matters is no different from denying it. If you want to honor your life, honor your time. Spend it where your soul grows. Invest it in purpose, in virtue, in now. Failure, most people run from it, hide it, deny it. But the Stoics, they embraced it. Not because they enjoyed suffering, but because they understood what failure really is. A mirror, not a verdict. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, if you fall, get back up. What matters isn't that you stumbled, but that you stood again. The Stoics saw each mistake as feedback, each setback as an instructor. They didn't let failure define them because they knew only their response had that power. Seneca once wrote, even if you fall, fall forward. Think about that. It means failure doesn't pull you away from the path, it pushes you further along it if you let it. So when you're rejected, embarrassed, or broken, pause. Then ask yourself, what can this teach me? Because in the Stoic world, failure is never final unless you refuse to learn. What if the very thing you fear is the only thing shaping the person you're meant to become? Most people spend their lives chasing comfort, soothing distractions, soft cushions, an easy way out. But the Stoics, they chased something harder, something deeper. Resilience. They didn't ask, what feels good right now? They asked, what will make me stronger tomorrow? Epictetus, born a slave, crippled by cruelty, didn't long for luxury. He longed for inner strength, and he forged it day by day in discomfort. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire, yet he woke before sunrise, trained his body, examined his thoughts, endured criticism without flinching. Why? Because he knew comfort weakens the soul, but discipline, it fortifies it. You see, comfort is sweet, but it's deceptive. It lulls you into passivity, then leaves you unprepared when storms hit. Resilience. Though resilience endures, and the only way to build it is to step into challenge willingly, not to suffer for no reason, but to train your mind like a warrior sharpens his blade. The Stoics didn't fear difficulty, they welcomed it, because they knew it shaped them into something comfort never could. Most people think Stoicism is about shutting down your feelings, becoming cold, numb, indifferent, but that's not mastery, that's avoidance. The truth is, the Stoics didn't suppress emotions, they studied them, sat with them, questioned them. They turned emotion into insight. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." What does that mean? It means you feel the fear, but you don't obey it. You notice the anger, but you don't let it take the wheel. You watch the grief rise, and instead of drowning in it, you learn to breathe through it. That's not weakness. That's strength of the rarest kind. Because real control is not pretending you're unbothered. It's standing still when the storm rises inside you and choosing not to lash out, run away, or break down. Just imagine for a moment, what would your life look like if every emotion had to pass through reason before becoming action? That's what the Stoics practiced every day. Not detachment, but deliberate response. And in that practice, they found peace not by escaping emotion, but by guiding it. The Stoics didn't run from pain, they sat with it and asked, what is this here to teach me? Pain, to them, wasn't punishment, it was instruction. Marcus Aurelius faced chronic illness and relentless pressure as emperor, yet he wrote about pain not with bitterness, but with clarity. He said, if it is endurable, then endure it. If it is not, then it will soon end. You see, pain was never the enemy. It was the test of character. Seneca was exiled. Epictetus was enslaved and crippled. Yet none of them let suffering define them. They knew it's not what happens to you, it's how you interpret it. Pain reveals what comfort hides. When you're hurting, your ego peels away. Your illusions fall. And what remains is the core of who you are. Have you ever noticed how much you discover about yourself? Not in ease, but in struggle. That's the Stoic gift. They didn't chase pain, but they didn't curse it either. They transformed it. They asked, how can I grow from this? Because in that question, strength is born. Not in comfort, but in the courage to keep walking even with the wound still open. The Stoics didn't retreat from adversity, they walked right into it. Not because they enjoyed suffering, but because they understood something deeper. Adversity isn't a wall, it's a mirror. It reflects who you really are when the world stops pretending. Marcus Aurelius ruled during a time of war, plague, and betrayal. Yet through every hardship, he reminded himself, the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. You see, adversity wasn't a detour, it was the path. When things fell apart, Stoics didn't collapse. They stood up taller. Because adversity reveals what peace cannot, it exposes the untrained mind, the fragile ego, the false expectations. And when you face it without flinching, something shifts. You become less reactive, more resilient. You stop wishing for easy days and start preparing for strong ones. Think about it. Have you ever grown in the calm or in the chaos? It's not the absence of trouble that builds greatness. It's how you walk through it with steady feet and an unshaken mind. The Stoics leaned into storms not to suffer, but to strengthen the roots of their soul. The Stoics didn't waste their lives chasing control. They practiced the art of letting go, not out of weakness, but out of wisdom. You see, real power isn't about bending the world to your will. It's about mastering your response when it doesn't. Seneca once said, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." That's what happens when we cling to what we can't change: plans, people, outcomes. The Stoics understood that the more you tighten your grip, the more peace slips through your fingers. So they chose surrender not as defeat, but as clarity. They didn't fight the current. They learned to sail with it. Because when you stop resisting life's flow, you start moving with purpose. Can you feel that shift? That calm in the middle of chaos? That's what happens when you release the illusion of control and embrace what's truly yours: your thoughts, your choices, your virtue. It's not about being passive. It's about being precise. The Stoics weren't pushovers, they were unshakable because they anchored themselves in what no one could take away. Surrender, for them, wasn't a loss, it was freedom. The Stoics didn't retreat into loneliness, they chose connection rooted in reason. They understood that we are made for cooperation, that we're not islands but threads in a larger fabric. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "What brings no benefit to the hive brings none to the bee." You see, they didn't chase empty popularity or shallow validation, but they valued meaningful bonds, the kind that shape character and sharpen virtue. The Stoic way wasn't to isolate yourself in the name of strength. It was to walk alongside others while keeping your peace intact. Connection doesn't mean attachment. It means presence. It means speaking truth with compassion, listening without judgment, and offering your time with intention. When you withdraw completely, you lose perspective. When you chase approval, you lose yourself. But when you engage from a centered place, you bring calm to the storm around you. That's what the Stoics did. They stood in community not to be praised, but to practice patience, courage, and humility with others. So ask yourself, who do you become when you face the world not with fear, but with quiet strength and open eyes? The Stoics didn't run from suffering, they studied it, walked through it, and came out wiser on the other side. They believed that pain wasn't the enemy, it was the teacher. Seneca once wrote, "Difficulties strengthen the mind as labor does the body." You see, to the Stoics, adversity wasn't a punishment, it was a forge. Life throws storms your way not to break you, but to reveal what's real within you. And the Stoics, they didn't waste their suffering on complaints. They turned it into clarity, into action, into inner fire. Every setback became a lesson. Every hardship became a test of virtue. They asked not, "Why me?" but "How can I rise from this?" Because when you stop avoiding discomfort, you start becoming someone unshakable. Someone who doesn't crumble when life gets heavy. Someone who walks through fire and keeps walking. So the next time you face pain, pause and remember, this moment isn't here to destroy you, it's here to shape you. If you let it, the Stoics didn't run from emotion, they faced it, examined it, and chose how to respond. They understood something most people miss. Emotions are not enemies, but neither are they kings. You don't have to obey every impulse or drown in every wave of feeling. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. That's not coldness, it's command. You feel anger rising? Pause. Ask, is this helping me become better? You feel anxiety creeping in? Breathe. Step back. Let reason speak before emotion acts. That's not detachment, it's discipline. You see, emotions are like wild horses. Let them run free and they drag you, but train them and they carry you far. Stoics didn't reject emotion, they just refused to be ruled by it. They knew that peace isn't the absence of feeling, it's the presence of control. So next time your emotions start to spiral, don't fight them, guide them, lead them. That's how a Stoic loves. How a Stoic grieves. How a Stoic stays grounded, even in the storm. The Stoics didn't waste their lives chasing payback, they rose above the poison of vengeance. They knew revenge feels satisfying for a moment, but it's a chain that binds you to your enemy. Epictetus once said, if someone does wrong, the harm lies in their action, not in your reaction. Let that sink in. When you retaliate, you become a mirror of the very thing you despise. But when you respond with clarity, you stay free. Have you ever noticed how much peace you gain when you simply let something go? Not out of weakness, but because you refuse to give that person another second of your soul. The Stoic doesn't plot revenge, he practices indifference. The insult? It came and went. The betrayal? Already passed. Why let old injuries live in your head rent-free? True power isn't punishing someone. It's being unaffected by them. You don't need to get even with anyone. You need to get ahead mentally, emotionally, spiritually. Rise above the noise. Be like the eagle, not the vulture. That's what the Stoics did. That's what you can do too. The Stoics didn't flinch when adversity came knocking. They leaned into it, like a mountain stands firm against the wind. Marcus Aurelius didn't wish away pain or beg for easier days. He welcomed hardship as a training ground for strength. The impediment to action advances action, he wrote. What stands in the way becomes the way. Powerful words. You see, most people run from discomfort. Stoics move through it. Why? Because they knew that avoiding struggle weakens you, but facing it forges you. Life will test you your patience, your discipline, your clarity, but those tests are invitations to rise. Imagine walking into a storm not with fear, but with calm resolve. That's Stoicism in action. What if, instead of asking, why me, you asked, what can I learn from this? The Stoic doesn't pray for ease. They build the muscle to endure difficulty. And in doing so, they become unshakable. When you lean into adversity with courage, you stop being a victim of life and start becoming the author of your resilience. The Stoics didn't seek applause, approval, or admiration from the crowd. They knew how fleeting praise could be, how quickly it fades or turns into criticism. Instead, they anchored their lives in principle, not popularity. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily that doing good wasn't about being seen, but about being consistent. Seneca taught that if your self-worth depends on what others think, you've handed them the keys to your peace. Think about that. How much of your energy is spent chasing validation from people who may never understand your path? The Stoic path says, Walk the road of virtue, even if no one claps for you. Live in alignment with what is right, not what is liked. Because when your actions are rooted in values, not ego, you no longer rise and fall with opinions. That's true freedom. A Stoic asks, am I being just? Am I acting with temperance? Am I living with courage and wisdom? Not, do they like me? In a world obsessed with followers and approval, the Stoic stands apart quietly doing the right thing, whether the world notices or not. The Stoics didn't obsess over the finish line. They didn't lie awake at night wondering, what if it doesn't work out? Or, will I get what I want? Instead, they trained their minds to care only about what they could control: their effort, their intention, their discipline. Epictetus put it simply, do your part and let the outcome be what it will. That doesn't mean they lacked ambition. It means they understood where freedom lives in the choice to act with purpose, not in the fantasy of a perfect result. You might work hard and fail. You might prepare carefully and still lose. But the Stoic sees that outcome as indifferent. What matters is that you showed up. You tried. You chose virtue over comfort. Imagine lifting a weight every day, not knowing exactly when your strength will grow, but trusting the process anyway. That's Stoicism. Focus on the action, not the applause. On the discipline, not the reward. Because the moment you tie your peace to results, you become a slave to things you can't command. A Stoic says, I will plant the seed. I may never sit under the shade, but I will plant it anyway. That's power. That's peace. The Stoics weren't interested in chasing happiness like it was some prize at the end of a race. They knew that the more you chase it, the more it slips through your fingers. Instead, they devoted themselves to something far deeper meaning. They asked, what kind of life is worth living? Not, what can make me feel good today? Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily that pleasure is fleeting, but purpose lasts. Seneca warned that those who seek comfort at every turn eventually become prisoners of their cravings. And Epictetus said it plainly, if you want to be happy, desire what depends on you. You see, true contentment isn't loud, it's quiet. It comes not from constant stimulation, but from alignment with your values, with your reason, with the part of you that knows right from wrong. Think of a craftsman at his workbench, losing track of time as he builds something with care. He's not smiling all the time, but he's fulfilled. That's the Stoic path. A life of service, of inner clarity, of honest labor. Because meaning doesn't shout, it whispers through your choices. So don't waste your life chasing sparks. Build a fire inside instead. One that warms you from within, even in the coldest storms. The Stoics didn't fight against reality, they leaned into it. They understood something we often forget, that wishing things were different doesn't make them so. Life unfolds with or without your consent. So why waste your strength on denial? Epictetus said, it's not things that disturb us, but our opinion of them. Let that settle. When it rained, the Stoic didn't curse the sky, he accepted the rain and kept walking. When people lied or betrayed, he didn't fall apart. He remembered that human beings, like storms, often act according to their nature. Accepting reality doesn't mean giving up. It means seeing clearly and then responding with wisdom, not emotion. It means saying, this is the situation now. What's the best move I can make? That clarity is power. Because when you stop fighting what you can't control, you start focusing on what you can, like your effort, your attitude, your courage. That's where peace lives, not in changing the world, but in changing your stance toward it. So the next time life surprises you, don't resist. Just pause, breathe, and lean into the moment. That's where your strength is waiting. The Stoics didn't run from their emotions. They faced them, studied them, and slowly mastered them. They knew that feelings weren't enemies, but messengers. Anger, fear, envy, they show you where your work lies. But here's the difference: they didn't let emotions lead, they let reason guide. Marcus Aurelius would pause and ask, is this emotion useful? And if it wasn't, he'd let it go. Not by force, but by understanding. You see, they trained their minds like warriors train their reflexes. When insulted, they didn't lash out, they observed the feeling rise. And then asked, why does this bother me? That space between emotion and reaction, that's the training ground. Imagine if every time you were triggered, you used it as a chance to practice strength. You'd become unshakable. Emotional control doesn't mean suppressing what you feel, it means holding space for it, processing it with clarity, and choosing your next move with calm. That's the Stoic path. And in a noisy world that constantly pulls your strings, self-control is more than discipline, it's freedom. They didn't seek comfort as a goal, they saw it as a trap. Comfort to the Stoics was never the mark of a strong life. It was challenge that shaped the soul. Marcus Aurelius slept on the floor when he could have had silk sheets, not because he hated pleasure, but because he feared weakness. He knew the more you rely on ease, the less you can handle hardship. Epictetus, born a slave, taught that suffering was the forge where true character is tempered. And Seneca warned luxury softens you, but adversity sharpens you. So they didn't run from discomfort, they invited it, gently, like an old teacher. A cold morning, a skipped meal, a moment of silence in chaos. These weren't punishments, they were training. The goal wasn't pain, it was strength. They asked, what happens when the world takes my comfort away? And they answered with discipline, you can too. Start with something small, walk instead of ride. Fast for a morning, embrace boredom without a screen. Each act trains your will, reminds your body who's in charge, and builds a quiet power inside. In the end, it's not comfort that makes you resilient, it's what you become in the absence of it. They didn't flinch from pain, they studied it. Pain, for the Stoics, wasn't an enemy to run from. It was a message to understand. It whispered truth about what mattered and what didn't. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, if it is endurable, endure it. If it's not, it will end. That wasn't denial, it was clarity. Pain was a teacher, not a punishment. Seneca once said, we suffer more in imagination than in reality, warning us that most of our torment comes from how we think about pain, not pain itself. The Stoics knew pain doesn't define you, your response does. So instead of avoiding it, they asked, what is this moment trying to teach me? And with that question, pain transformed into progress. You can do the same. The ache of loneliness might reveal your need for deeper purpose. The sting of rejection might guide you back to self-respect. The discomfort of failure might uncover a better path. Every wound becomes wisdom, if you're willing to listen. So, don't run from pain, face it with calm eyes and a steady heart. Because it's through pain that we grow roots. Roots that hold firm when the storm comes. They didn't perform for the crowd. They trained for the soul. In a world shouting for likes, followers, and applause, the Stoics stood quietly apart. Epictetus taught, if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. Because true growth doesn't require an audience, it requires silence. Can you feel the weight of that? The idea that your worth isn't measured in views, but in virtue? The Stoics understood. When you're ruled by the need to be seen, you lose control of who you are. You bend, you change, you shrink just to fit expectations that aren't even your own. But when you stop chasing attention, you start building something far more powerful: peace. A peace that doesn't rise or fall based on who's watching. A peace that remains, even when the spotlight moves on. They didn't need to post it to prove it. Their confidence came from inner alignment, not outer validation. And you? You don't need to be loud to be heard. You don't need to impress to have impact. When you're at peace with yourself, the world loses its grip on you. So let them look the other way while you build your fortress of calm. They move with purpose but not obsession. The Stoics knew outcomes are illusions we don't control, but our effort, our integrity, our mindset, that's where the power lives. You can't force the wind, but you can adjust your sails. Marcus Aurelius once reminded himself, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. It's tempting to tie our peace to results. The job offer, the praise, the victory. But what happens when they don't come? Do you crumble? Or do you keep showing up steady, unshaken, clear? The Stoic doesn't wait for a guarantee to give their best. They give it anyway, then let go. That's strength. That's freedom. Imagine waking up every day, giving your full heart to the work, and being okay no matter what the world hands back. That's not weakness. That's the highest form of discipline. So ask yourself, can you detach without disconnecting? Can you care deeply without being owned by the outcome? That's the Stoic path. And it leads to a peace no success or failure can take away. While the world chased noise, the Stoics walked into silence. They didn't dread being alone, they welcomed it. Because in solitude, you meet the only person you truly control, of yourself. Seneca wrote, a great man is one who can be in the midst of the crowd and keep with perfect sweetness the independence of solitude. You know, solitude isn't loneliness. It's a return, a recalibration, a clearing of the fog so you can hear your own thoughts again. Most people fear that silence because it reveals too much, but a Stoic sees it as training. Alone with their mind, they sharpen it. Alone with their fears, they face them. Alone with the quiet, they grow stronger in it. Have you ever paused long enough to feel your own breath, noticing how many thoughts were just echoes of the world? It's in solitude where you build your inner fortress. No need for approval, no need for applause, just you, your discipline, your clarity. That's why the Stoic retreats not to escape life, but to return to it stronger. And when they re-emerge, they bring with them a peace the world didn't give and cannot take away. They never said emotions were evil, but they knew emotions were powerful, and without training they become tyrants. The Stoic doesn't numb his feelings. He observes them, deciphers them, and then decides what to do with them. Marcus Aurelius, in the chaos of war and politics, still paused long enough to write, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." That's emotional alchemy. turning anxiety into awareness, turning anger into boundaries, turning pain into wisdom. You feel the emotion, yes, but you don't obey it. You ask, is this helping me see clearly, or is it clouding my reason? And in that moment, you regain control. You don't shout when insulted, you breathe. You don't collapse when betrayed, you center yourself. That's not weakness, that's mastery. Imagine standing in the fire of your feelings without being burned. That's the Stoic path. Calm, not because life is calm, but because your inner compass stays true, no matter how wild the winds. They knew that if you only seek comfort, you become a slave to it. And the moment hardship arrives, which it always does, you crumble. So they chose a different path. Seneca would sleep on the floor and wear coarse clothes not to punish himself, but to remind his body, you don't control me. I can do hard things. Epictetus, born into slavery, learned to laugh in the face of misfortune. Marcus Aurelius, surrounded by privilege, still reminded himself daily that comfort was fleeting and discipline was lasting. That's what training for adversity means. You wake up early even when your bed whispers, stay. You stay calm when the world yells, panic. You speak truth when it's easier to stay silent. Each act, small as it seems, is a sharpening of your soul. And when real adversity hits grief, failure, betrayal, you're not broken. You're ready. Because you didn't build your peace on ease, you built it on inner strength. They understood something we often forget. Pain is not the enemy, it's the fire that tempers the steel of your soul. So instead of running from it, they walked straight into it. Not recklessly, but deliberately. Marcus Aurelius didn't pretend life was fair. He lost children, faced betrayal, endured war, and yet he didn't curse the pain. He studied it, Saturday with it, asked, what can this teach me? Epictetus taught his students that every hardship is an invitation to grow. Even when someone broke his leg, he didn't scream, he simply said, there goes my leg. Because he had already trained his mind to remain untouched. Pain, for the Stoic, is not to be suppressed. It is to be seen, named, accepted, and turned into strength. And so when pain arrives in your life, don't run, don't numb. Let it shape you. Let it chisel away the weakness until only the truth remains. That's not suffering, that's transformation. In a world addicted to validation, the Stoics chose something rarer. Inner approval. They weren't chasing applause. They were chasing alignment with reason, with virtue, with themselves. Seneca wrote, the reward of a good deed is in having done it. No audience, no praise, just the quiet certainty that you acted right. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily that fame is like smoke, it rises, swirls, disappears. So instead of asking, what will they think of me, he asked, did I act according to my nature? That's self-mastery. Doing what is right, even when no one is watching, especially when no one is watching. In today's world, where likes and followers define too many lives, this is a radical act. Can you stay committed to your principles even when no one sees, no one claps, no one cares? That's the true discipline the Stoics live by, and it's the only kind that lasts. The Stoics moved slowly, but they moved with intention. In a world obsessed with speed, they knew the value of steady pace. Epictetus warned, no great thing is created suddenly. Whether you're building character, healing pain, or mastering a craft, it takes time. And more than time, it takes patience. Marcus Aurelius didn't wake up demanding change overnight. He woke up reminding himself, progress is made step by step. You don't conquer the mind by force, but by showing up daily, especially on the days you want to quit. When everyone around you is racing towards success, chasing applause, fearing stillness, can you resist the panic? Can you walk slowly, breathe deeply, and trust the process? That's what Stoic patience looks like. It's not passive, it's powerful. Because while others burn out in the sprint, the Stoic finishes the marathon with clarity, composure, and strength that endures. The Stoics didn't wake up and ask, "How do I feel today?" They asked, "What's the right thing to do today?" You see, emotions are waves. They rise, they crash, they vanish. But principles are anchors. Seneca once said, "If a man knows not to which port he sails, no wind is favorable." The Stoic man doesn't chase every passing feeling. He doesn't let anger dictate his words or fear distort his decisions. He stands on a deeper truth. Even when he feels lost, tired, or doubtful, he doesn't abandon his values. Discipline, courage, humility, justice, these aren't just words. They are the North Star when your emotions cloud the sky. So, the next time you're tempted to react, pause. And remember, your mood is temporary, but your character is forever. And every moment is a chance to choose who you really are. The Stoics didn't run from discomfort, they leaned into it. Not because they enjoyed suffering, but because they knew that comfort makes the body soft and the mind weaker. Epictetus, born a slave, walked with a limp his entire life. But he taught strength with every word. Why? Because he believed hardship reveals the soul. When you avoid discomfort, you avoid growth. When you seek only ease, you become fragile. The Stoic path is not about luxury, it's about inner armor. Cold showers, early mornings, silence in chaos, these aren't punishments. They're training. Life doesn't ask if you're ready, it simply comes. The one who has practiced self-denial, who has made peace with discomfort, meets it calmly. So, when was the last time you chose discomfort just to sharpen your will? In the end, the Stoics didn't crave ease. They craved strength. And strength is born in fire, not cushions. The Stoics didn't wait to feel inspired. They didn't check their emotions to see if they were in the mood. They acted because it was right, because it was needed, because reason said so. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire while sick, tired, and surrounded by betrayal. He didn't wait for ideal conditions. He created discipline through action. You see, motivation is like the wind, unreliable and shifting. But reason is the compass. When you let logic lead, you become consistent. You move forward even on difficult days. So next time you don't feel like doing what you know, you must pause and ask, what would reason tell me to do right now? The Stoic answer is simple: do it. Not because it's easy or fun or exciting, but because your soul depends on the integrity of your choices. Discipline isn't a mood, it's a principle. The Stoics didn't waste words. They believed that speech is not just noise, but a reflection of the mind. So they didn't gossip, they didn't ramble, they didn't speak to fill silence. They spoke with intention, with clarity, with purpose. Epictetus once said, "Only speak when you can improve the silence." And how true that is. Think about it, how much of what people say today adds chaos instead of calm. When you speak without care, you weaken your discipline. You leak your energy. You betray your inner stillness. But when your words are rooted in purpose, in values, in truth, you speak like a Stoic. You speak less, but you say more. And in that restraint, there is power. So next time you're tempted to join meaningless talk, remember, your voice is sacred. Protect it. The Stoics didn't fear opinions, they stood rooted in values. They weren't swayed by public praise or public shame. You see, to a Stoic, the crowd doesn't define the truth, virtue does. Seneca warned that if you try to please everyone, you end up pleasing no one, not even yourself. And Marcus Aurelius reminded himself often, what stands in the way becomes the way. So even when others mocked, doubted, or misunderstood him, he stayed grounded. And so should you. Because when you live by your principles, not by popularity, you become unshakable. Think about how often we let strangers on the internet, coworkers, even family members, bend our will. But why? Their opinions come and go like wind. Your values? They are roots, deep, steady, and they grow stronger every time you choose what's right over what's easy. That's how you become untouchable. The Stoics didn't beg to be loved, they chose to be worthy of love. They never chased affection by sacrificing their dignity. Instead, they cultivated a character that attracted respect, not just attention. You see, Epictetus said it clearly, seek not for events to happen as you wish, but wish for events to happen as they do, and your life will go smoothly. The same applies to love. Don't wish to be loved by everyone, wish to be the kind of person who deserves it. That's a subtle but powerful shift. When you stop performing for approval and start building your inner strength, people feel it. And even if they don't, you're still at peace. Because love without self-respect is dependency in disguise. Have you ever noticed how exhausting it is to earn someone's love through effort, silence, or pretending? Real love doesn't need masks. The Stoics chose to love themselves enough not to become beggars of affection. That's the kind of love that's free and freeing. The Stoics didn't run from pain, they walked through it, eyes open. They didn't flinch when life struck them hard. They simply asked, is this within my control? And if it wasn't, they endured it. Not with bitterness, but with quiet strength. Marcus Aurelius, facing the weight of an empire and the death of loved ones, wrote not laments but reminders. He told himself, if it hurts you, it's because you let it. Just pause. Can you imagine carrying that kind of power in your mind? To feel the sting of disappointment or loss and still stand firm, not because you're numb, but because you're prepared. That's not denial, that's discipline. In our world today, we're taught to escape discomfort at all costs, scroll past it, drink it away, distract ourselves. But the Stoics knew, pain is not the enemy. Running from it is. Because every time you avoid discomfort, you give it more power. And every time you meet it head on, it loses its grip. Pain becomes less a monster, more a teacher. And you become unshakable. The Stoics believed silence was a weapon, not a weakness. In a world full of noise, opinions, and emotional outbursts, the one who remains calm is the one in control. Epictetus once said, we have 2 ears and 1 mouth so that we can listen twice as much as we speak. Think about that. How many times have you regretted something you said, but rarely something you didn't? To stay silent doesn't mean you're indifferent or weak. It means you've mastered the urge to react. It means you've created space between stimulus and response, a sacred space where wisdom can speak louder than impulse. And in that space, real strength is born. The Stoics taught us to observe before we respond, to let our words be few but meaningful. Because when you speak with purpose, not just to fill the silence, people listen. You become a presence. You don't just talk, you resonate. And in a world that screams, a whisper from the calmest voice can change everything. But it's not just about staying calm. It's about being clear. Stoicism teaches you to pause before reacting, to look inward and ask, is this worth my peace? That one moment of reflection can save you hours of regret. Because what hurts you isn't always what happens, it's how you interpret it. The Stoics believe that the obstacle is not the enemy, your reaction is. So, when someone criticizes you, insults you, or tries to drag you into their chaos, stop. Don't rush to defend, to explain, to lash out. Just breathe. Because silence isn't weakness, it's strength held back by wisdom. You don't need to control what others do. You just need to control what you do next. That's the core of self-discipline. And once you understand that, you begin to reclaim your inner power piece by piece. You start to notice when the old habits try to return. And instead of being pulled by them, you observe. You let the storm pass through without becoming the storm. Can you imagine the kind of strength that takes? To feel the fire but not burn? To hold the sword but not swing? That's the kind of man Stoicism shapes. Not a man who escapes emotion, but a man who rides above it like a mountain untouched by the wind. You know, you won't always get it right. You'll slip. You'll react. You'll raise your voice or lose your cool. But each time, the path is still there waiting for you to return. The Stoic path doesn't punish you for being human. It invites you to be more than that. To rise again, stronger, wiser, more grounded than before. And in that, you find peace. A kind of peace that can't be taken because it was never given by the world in the first place. It was forged inside with fire and stillness and time. So when the world tries to shake you, just stand. When the noise gets louder, just listen to your breath. When anger pulls at your chest, let it pass. Because not everything needs your reaction. Not every disrespect needs a reply. Not every conflict needs your energy. You were not built to fight every battle. You were built to choose wisely. And sometimes, the strongest move is no move at all. Think about this. How many regrets in your life came from speaking too fast or acting too soon? How many moments of peace were traded for 5 seconds of pride? That's the cost of undisciplined emotion. That's why the Stoics trained their minds harder than warriors trained their swords. They knew real power is invisible. It's the man who can endure insult without losing himself. The man who can see the trap and simply walk away. Not because he's scared, but because he's free. And when you live like that, when you stop seeking validation, revenge, or attention, something changes. You stop being pulled by the world, and you start to anchor yourself in something deeper. That's when you become truly dangerous, because nothing can move a man who's anchored in reason, purpose, and inner peace. The Stoics weren't trying to impress. They were trying to be unshakable. And that's the mission you're on too. Not to win arguments or look strong, but to be strong. silently, steadily, stoically. So next time someone mocks you, glares at you, tries to provoke you, just pause and ask yourself, is this worth my peace? You'll find that most of the time the answer is no. Let them talk. Let them project their chaos. That has nothing to do with you. You're not here to match their noise. You're here to master your silence. Silence isn't emptiness. It's clarity. It's what allows you to hear your values over the volume of the world. And it's in that silence where your power grows. The Stoics believe the universe will test your emotions not to break you, but to reveal you. Every insult, delay, failure is a mirror. A question: are you ruled by impulse or guided by principle? When you live by principle, you no longer need permission to be calm. You don't need everyone to like you. You don't fear losing because your values are intact. Your strength isn't in the outcome, it's in the restraint. The ability to walk away, to stay composed, to stand your ground without lifting your voice. That's what Stoicism gives you. Not just calmness, but command. Not just peace, but power. And the more you practice it, the more natural it becomes. Until you no longer have to try, you just are. You become the kind of person who doesn't respond to chaos with chaos, but with quiet confidence. And here's the secret: most people aren't prepared for that kind of silence. They're ready for a fight, an argument, a reaction, but not your stillness. Your composure disarms them. It makes them question their own noise. And in that moment, you've already won. You didn't lose control. You didn't need to shout. You simply stayed you. That's the power of inner discipline. It's not just about holding back your words. It's about anchoring yourself so deeply that the storms above never touch the ocean floor. You know, the Stoics weren't emotionless. They felt pain, loss, anger just like anyone else. But they didn't let those feelings make the decisions. They learned how to feel without being ruled. That's emotional mastery, and it's something you can build. Start with the next conversation that tests you, or the next delay, insult, or unexpected event. Use it as practice, not punishment. Let it refine you. Every difficult moment is a chance to train your mind. To respond, not react. To think, not explode. To breathe, not break. There's this idea in Stoic thought that you don't control the world, only your response to it. Think about that. You don't control people's opinions, or the weather, or the traffic, or your past. But you do control your attitude, your attention, and your actions. And that's not a small thing, it's everything. When you truly grasp this, you stop wasting energy on what's outside your reach. You stop chasing apologies that may never come, and start building the character that no one can take from you. Your peace becomes self-made, independent, strong. So the next time you feel triggered, pause. Let that emotion pass through like a cloud across the sky. Don't cling to it. Don't fight it. Just notice it and let it go. You're not your anger. You're not your anxiety. You're the one observing it. And from that place of awareness, of calm, you gain real power. The power to speak with clarity, to act with purpose, and to live with intention. That's what Stoicism teaches. Not to suppress who you are, but to refine it. To bring out the strongest, clearest version of yourself. One choice at a time. So here's the truth. Life won't always be fair. People won't always be kind. And outcomes won't always go your way. But that doesn't mean you have to lose yourself in the chaos. You can still be calm when others are reactive. You can still be honest when others deceive. You can still hold the line your line no matter who's watching, because that's what real power looks like. It's quiet, it's steady, and it doesn't ask for applause. It simply chooses discipline over impulse, responsibility over blame, clarity over noise. So, if today tests you good, that's your training, that's your invitation to rise. You don't need a perfect path, you just need the courage to take the next step and the wisdom to take it slowly, deliberately, with full awareness of who you're becoming. You already have everything you need. Just remember what the Stoics would say: waste no more time arguing what a good person should be. Be one. Subscribe to the Stoic Room to stay grounded in what matters. If this video helped you, like it so others can find it too. And when you're ready, explore our full playlist, Stoic Wisdom, Mastering Emotions and Inner Strength. Until next time, stay calm, stay strong, and keep walking the Stoic path.